founder of Associated Stocktaking, relentless learner, and quietly fierce human being. Stephen Moore, welcome to the show.
Oh my goodness, Tracy. You've just intimidated with my own introduction.
Stephen, for our listeners, walk us through, give us a bit of background insight into what it is that your business does.
So, Associated Stocktaking, I believe, is Perth's leading stock-taking inventory management company and soon to be Australia's leading.
When you say that, do you mean like people who are high up in power as such?
I believe that there are nefarious influences in the world that are not in the interests of the individual humans having wonderful lives.
Do you feel like you're on sort of like a high frequency that kind of happens, or is there anything for our listeners you could share that's helped you manifest those things in life?
I believe in karma, and I think the first and most important thing is to go about your business in a way where you try to positively impact those around you. I think that's very important.
Hello and welcome to the Real Biz Life Chronicles, where we discuss all things business, branding, and life from the Horizon Digital podcast recording studio here in Perth. I'm your host, Tracy, the founder of Design Studio Perth, and to celebrate the launch of Season 2 of the show, Design Studio Perth is offering all our listeners a free brand discovery. So if you know that your brand was built around yourself and not your ideal client, use the link in our show notes below to book in a time to have a chat. Now, the Real Biz Life Chronicles is on a mission to become one of Australia's leading business podcasts, but in order to do that, we please need your support. If you do enjoy this episode, we please ask that you like and subscribe to our channels below. What if everything you were taught about success was a trap? The job, the mortgage, the 45-year plan that leaves you worn down, burnt out, and still broke. What if the real path to freedom wasn't the map you were handed, but hidden in the questions you were too scared to ask? Today's episode is about unlearning, about stepping out the system, the story, and the struggle, and learning to live life on our terms. It's for the ones who've been laughed at, underestimated, and told to just be realistic. The ones who questioned everything, even when it comes to them from the outsider. And it's a reminder that sometimes trusting too much doesn't make you naive, it makes you brave. You'll hear about the raw lessons of entrepreneurship, the cost of chasing someone else's dream, and the power of finally backing yourself. But you'll also meet someone who leads without ego, who never needed to be loud to be powerful. Someone who's helped more people than he'll ever admit, because that's just who he is. He's been described as the best of the best. He'd never say it himself, but those close to him do. And if there was a theme song that would play in the room as this person entered, it's going to be I'm Gonna Be by 500 Miles because this man has walked every damn step of it. Founder of Associated Stocktaking, relentless learner, and quietly fierce human being. This is a conversation you didn't know you needed. Stephen Moore, welcome to the show.
Oh my goodness, Tracy. You've just intimidated with my own introduction.
Not at all. Did you have one planned, did you?
No, I'm just, okay. I was sitting back going, I wonder where this is going to go. And it's beautiful. It's very, very interesting what you've written there. And some people are saying things behind my back that are actually quite nice for a change. This is a good thing.
Definitely. So we reached out to someone close to you and that was what they had to say. And I love the song that they recommended as well, which is great. Stephen, for our listeners, walk us through, give us a bit of background insight into what it is that your business does.
So Associated Stocktaking, I believe, is Perth's leading stock-taking inventory management company and soon to be Australia's leading stock-taking inventory management company as we spread across the States,
Great.
Which we've been doing in the last few months quite successfully, which is really, really exciting for me. But the company itself actually started back in the 1980s. So I wasn't the founder, but I did buy into it when I came across to Australia seeking I suppose a better life and better opportunity. And back in the 80s, there was a deli that was being sold, and the buyers and sellers, they couldn't find anyone to do the stock take for a reasonable price. And they thought, oh my goodness, there's a brilliant business opportunity here.
Yeah.
And And they set up Associated Stocktaking. That was their first job. And there was some real strong personalities and individuals involved in that. There's a gentleman called Mark Krasenstein, a gentleman called Murray Brown, and a gentleman called Dan McCourt. And these guys sort of got together, and I think there's a little bit of a squabble over who actually set the company up.
Oh, I see.
I'm not sure. I wasn't there, but there's slightly different stories.
Right.
And from there, we specialised in what they call handover stock takes. That's when someone's buying and selling a business. That's when they go, oh, I wonder how much stock's there, because they need to know exactly, and they need to trust that when they, accept the figure, that they're getting what they pay for. And at the same time, if you've been in business for a long time and you've built up stock in a business, that's your money. So you want someone who takes it very seriously, because, you spent 10 years of your life battering away and there's a few $100,000 worth of stock. You want to make sure you get every cent of it. So Associated Stocktaking grew out of doing these handover stock takes, and there's all sorts of wacky and incredible stories. And the great thing for me was when I came to Perth seeking an opportunity to stay in Australia, basically I just didn't trust having being sponsored by someone else and having my life in their hands, because I've seen some people pretty badly abused by people who are in a position of power, because they hold the keys to their visa. Yeah. And they're supposed to give them 3 years and then offer them a job and that sort of thing. And after 2.5 years, they just flick them off after they've made them work in freezers, make them do all the overtime, make them work on Sundays for no extra pay. Yeah. I wasn't going to put myself in that position. So I was very fortunate. I met a gentleman called Bill Cameron, and Bill Cameron has been involved in Associated Stocktaking since I think about 1987 or 1988. And I'm now on the same journey as him. The journey is, of course, losing my hair. But Bill is an absolute gentleman, and I was very, very fortunate, because I came here, I was doing multi-level marketing, and I'd bought into this alternative way from what I was taught at school to try and, move forward in life. Sure. And it gave me an awful lot of advantages, because I had read a lot of sort of self-development, motivational books to try and see opportunities and to, improve myself and overcome any issues that I might have, and just get more directed and dream bigger. And I used to say things like, why does this guy earn this much when I earn this much? Well, it's because he thinks bigger, and that's where it all starts. Yeah, definitely. So unfortunately, I feel that many multi-level marketing opportunities, they oversell that aspect, because let's face it, the vast majority of people who get involved do not go on to make millions and millions and millions of dollars. But I had absolute belief that was but it didn't quite happen for me that way. But what was great was it put me into a forward motion. And when you move forward, you create your own momentum. Yeah, so true. And I've seen all these people who talk about having your dream boards and having this, and you must know how this smells. I'm not really sure that that's all true. Well. And the reason I'm not sure it's all true is because, for some bizarre reason, since I've come to Australia, everything that I wanted in Australia has materialized for me. Sure. And I didn't do the dream boards, and I didn't do this, and I didn't do that. But what I did have was I held on to what I wanted. And what I wanted was, I wanted a family. I wanted one of those old Italian houses that I drove past with Bill one day, and he's taking me on a little tour when I came to Australia. He took me on tours and helped me sort of understand a little bit about Perth. And I was like, oh, wow, I love the balconies, and I love the pillars and all that stuff. And I may have even said this while I was driving past the house that I now own. I want one of those. I think it was the same house that I'm now in. Oh my goodness, wow. And I always wanted a pool table, because my grandfather had a pool table. And I always wanted a music studio, because you might not realise it, but I'm a rock star. But it's just that nobody knows about it, except for... It's out now. You heard it here here's first. The news. That was what I always wanted to be. But I wanted to have a studio, and I wanted to have a drum kit. Cool. So I was like, wow, so now I've got this Italian house, I've got my pool man cave, and I've got my recording studio that's in process. I've got my drum kit there, and I can play it at midnight, because the other thing that I visualised having neighbours in their 80s who were deaf.
Great.
And I have got now neighbours in their 80s who are deaf. Can you believe it?
That's a great setup.
So that was, that's, I suppose, trying to explain a little bit about how I ended up here, was because I was just looking for something better. I was looking for something where I could actually create a life that I wanted.
Yeah.
And when I looked around when I was younger, I saw men and women locked in marriages with families with massive financial pressure.
Yeah.
Fighting like cat and dog sometimes. Lots of social issues come from those pressures. And I didn't see anyone really living a great life and being really, really happy where I was. And so I decided that I wanted to do something different. I didn't want to just follow my dad's advice of, buy a flat as quickly as you can, go to higher education, because that's the key to all these things. I mean, he believed that.
Yes.
Because of the conditioning of that time.
Of course.
And they really pushed this, you got to go and get qualified and get your degree, which is really interesting now, because to me, it just looks like a rort for money to create bits of paper that do not separate you from the crowd anymore. They're putting people into massive debt, and the marketing of it is painting this picture that you're going to do this. It's all bullshit.
Yes, I tend to agree. I have a degree and a diploma. I guess now having my own business, I kind of use both. But I think if I hadn't done the diploma at Pretoria Tech, I've gone to a few different unis, as you can tell, at TAFE, which was more hands-on. That better prepared me, I think, for real life, as opposed to a 5-year degree that I did. So.
Wow, that's really cool.
Yeah.
I mean, look, I do believe in learning, and I do believe in education, but I don't like bullshit.
No, neither.
And that's one thing that, if anybody out there actually is looking for an inventory management company, we don't bullshit. Okay. We say how it is, and we, but when I came to Australia in search of this sort of better life, I came across associated stock taking as an opportunity to get a visa to sponsor myself into the country.
Sure.
I had my head in the multi-level marketing, get the leverage thing, build these massive teams. But then I realized that ultimately promises were getting made and not delivered. And my reputation was being affected by me promoting something, saying, the company's going to do this and this and this and this. And then the company doesn't do it. And you look over your shoulder and you go, but I've just promised, 500 people that this is going to be the case.
Yeah.
I've stood up in front of rooms. I've motivated people. I've got people to part with money.
Yeah.
And you've now not delivered.
Yeah.
So after going through that repeatedly, and it was quite a mental journey trying to overcome it and to refocus and to say, right, okay, this time they're going to get it right. But how many times do you do that? And so with the opportunity that I had to get into traditional business and be an owner and a partner, I realized that if I make decisions and I make promises, I can deliver on those promises, and I'm not going to overpromise and then under-deliver. I'm going to try and do the opposite, or at least make my commitments come true. And that's what I love about being in my own business, making my decisions, and speaking to customers. We can do this, and I do come from a very salesy kind of background.
Yeah.
Ever since I was 14, I was knocking on doors trying to sell bacon to little ladies, and
bacon. Did you say?
It was great. We used to put all the really good ones, bacon. Used to get the nicest looking packets of bacon, put them on the top, and you just knock on the door and you say, "Excuse me, would you like to buy some bacon?" And shove the bacon right up in their face so they'd have a look at it and see how good it was. But having come from a sort of salesy background, I always say yes, which in an inventory management set scenario can be very dangerous.
Yeah.
Because ultimately I want to successfully, bring new clients in and deliver to their expectations. And I will always say, yes, we can do it. And then I'll leave the meeting and go. And then I'm on the phone going, right, okay, we need to be able to do this. Can we do this? Can we do this? Can we do that? And I'm speaking to, because I bought into the business with a gentleman called Andrew Goldthorpe as well.
Right.
And the both of us were involved in multi-level marketing. But ultimately, in time, I've become the sort of sole owner of Associated Stocktaking. But the commitments that I've made to everybody who works with me, including Bill, we did the transition on a handshake, and I'm very proud of the fact that everything that I promised him, because, he's upper 60s now.
Right.
So everything I promised him, I'm delivering.
Yeah.
And that is really important because he's a gentleman who, for many, many years, from about 2006, 2007, I think it was 2007, I met him and got involved in associate stock taking. He's been a gentleman to me throughout my life. And it's really important that you have genuine support and people who've got different experiences that are there just sometimes to give you that little bit of advice that you really need to hear.
Yeah, definitely.
And also be solid. Solid. Lives are built on solid people. They're not built on people who are wishy-washy or who don't follow through in commitments. They're built on solid human beings, men and women.
Yes.
And Bill's been that for me, as has Andy. And now we form a fantastic management team where we've got a huge amount of experience. We've actually pioneered our own way of doing things. And that does mean that there was a couple of customers where I said, yeah, we can do it. And we really struggled. I'll be honest, Tracy. And I felt terrible. But what's really interesting is in time, those customers have kind of come back and they recognized that we did the best that we could. Yeah. But that was a long time ago when we were refining our processes and finding our way. Yeah. But now, we are very, what would I say? We're very experienced at what we do.
Yeah.
And I think that the management team that we have across Australia has more experience in terms of years. Like we've got like more than 150 years of stock taking experience in our management team.
That's
which is enormous. And our entire focus when we get a lead and when we get a client is to deliver what that client needs. I don't have a cookie cutter over here and it says, this is how we do stock takes. We're going to come in and we're going to do that for you. I listen.
Yeah.
I try and see what are they looking for, identify the result that they ideally would want.
Yes. And
then we work back from that to create procedures to make it. So we did a high Arctic energy services. We did this company over in Papua New Guinea. So that's one of our first international stock takes. Wow. Yeah, we've done 2 or 3.
Yeah.
And they had a massive warehouse where they had an auditor coming in, but they knew it was in a mess. And we said, yeah, we can do that. And we sent a team across, a gentleman called Ola Nielsen, who's been basically state manager of associated stock taking here in Western Australia for many years, doing about 300 stock takes a year. Wow. For many. It's like, sending over a real experienced team. And the auditing team asked, can we see your procedures before they engaged us? Can we see the procedures? So, right, okay. Went and created a document for them and said, here's our procedures.
Yeah.
They then looked in and said, yeah, okay. They hired us, we went in. And then as soon as we got on the ground, we had to rewrite the whole thing.
Right.
And that's what I try to explain. It's not, there's a corporate world out there where there's bits of paper for this and there's procedures for that. But you know what? There's a real world out there. And I like to think that we're a real world company that provides real world solutions, not just cookie cutter, bits of paper that tick boxes kind of nonsense that the world seems to be turning more to that. The expertise, experience, the ability to actually be able to do things counts for nothing if you don't have the little bit of paper that says you tick this box.
Yeah. And I think you've also highlighted something that not everything in business is kind of planned out. There's stuff that pops up and you can create a service. I've done this in my business, There's something that a client might mention. You think, oh, that's a great idea. It kind of plugs into their branding. So I will sometimes do things on the fly as well. But then what happens, you go away, give it the thought that it requires and then kind of offer it as a service as well.
I have a suspicion that this entire thing may have come from that.
To be honest, yes.
Yeah, exactly. You see things and it's fluid and you identify stuff. And
definitely. Hence, I've now got better lighting because that was a bit of a fail in the beginning. But that's the beauty of it, right? Like it's not perfect, polished from the get-go. It's kind of that journey.
It is, but it's the momentum. It's the forward moving, one step in front of the other. And if you've got one step going in front of the other and you have a bit of a goal in mind and you're switching your reticular activation system onto the opportunities that get you towards there, guess what? The universe provides.
Yes.
But if you're not going to put one foot in front of the other, stop fantasizing that you're going to get anywhere because that's all you have. You've got to put the one foot. Action is the miracle part of the process, has been said by many, many people, but it absolutely is. When you do things, things happen, opportunities happen, you meet people, you identify stuff, and you create more and more momentum. And if you keep going and you keep going, it just builds. And then all of a sudden you look back and you go, whoa, we're actually got somewhere.
Yeah.
You know, things are starting to happen. But without patience, you burn out.
Yeah, my patience I'm still working on.
Oh, yeah? So see, I'm 50
Getting
now.
better.
So what I found was when I was younger, I used to say, and in the sort of sales realm and the multi-level marketing realm, it's like there's always these cherries and these goals that they put there for you to push for.
Yeah.
And what I found was I was great at pushing, but you push and you push and you push and you push, you hit this, and then you hit a bit of a glass ceiling, and you hit the glass ceiling because there's only so much an individual can do. It's about who have you got around you? Who's the team that you've built? If you just run around and do everything for everyone, you hit a glass ceiling. And it's about trying to work and develop the people that are with you and help them, you know, get on their courses and start putting their feet in front of each other. And that's when the sort of momentum builds through a team of people, and really exciting things can happen. And if you're in a very, you know, ethical environment with ethical people, everyone's going to win. And I believe that we have that at Associated Stocktaking, and I believe that people, you know, they come in, and most of us as casual staff, but the senior people have come in and they've been around for a long, long time.
Yeah.
And that is something that I think this company is really proud of, that, you know, we've got people who've been with us for 30 years.
Wow.
That's amazing. There's a brand loyalty. This company almost has its own life.
Yes.
And I remember Mark Krasenstein, who sadly left us through cancer fairly recently. He was an incredibly intelligent guy.
Sorry to hear.
Yeah. Well, it's this, you know, as we get older, these things happen.
Yeah.
But he was very helpful in terms of some of the advice that he gave me. I had some questions when it came to the handover stock takes because we had some rivals coming in, and he was the one that gave me the answer to the new technology and the new sales spin that this other company had. And he was like, mate, it's dreadful, Stephen. The purchaser has no protection here. I was like, oh. So I've got this expertise pool to draw upon. And then we've got Murray Brown. One of the things Murray Brown said to me, he said, look, he's one of Perth's foremost business brokers. What you'll find is that you'll create a phenomenal business network through stock taking. So you get to know a lot of business people.
Yeah. And
that's been a real eye-opener because, again, you meet people, you know, some of them you learn lessons from, some of them you make friendships with. There's all sorts of things. But,
definitely.
But if you're swimming in the sewer, it's really hard to make connections that are going to help you get anywhere.
Yeah.
So what I found the biggest change for me coming to Australia was when I was in the UK, there was a force of gravity holding me in place to my network of friends and to my social position.
Yeah.
So I grew up in a small village where my mum and dad were both working. My dad had 3 jobs when I was young, worked for the council, but it was an employee mentality conditioned through school and all that stuff to have that sort of lower middle class, trying to push up a little bit kind of mentality. I came to Perth and, well, first off, I found it quite interesting just coming to Perth on my own.
Yeah, it would have been.
There's an awful lot of loneliness in this city.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of immigrants here as well.
There is, but there's a lot of, it's like there seems to be a lot of people being left behind. And when I started off, it's hard to break into the sort of circles. That's how it kind of felt.
It did. I felt the same.
But when I got involved with Associated Stocktaking, that opened up a whole new world. And, you know, that means that when you're dealing with people who are all trying to move forward in different ways, or not all, but there's much more of them, you make some very productive connections.
Yeah.
And that helps you on life's journey because you cannot do it alone.
No.
And I think what's happened for Associated Stocktaking here in Western Australia, you know, there's us and there's the big corporate. That's pretty much all there is. There was a fair few other companies before, but they've, gone broke. There was some very hard times. Most of the time I've been in associated stock taking, we haven't made a lot of money. It's not been this, the business that it is today is, and it's a journey. So the big competition that we have, a company called RGI, so you can look them up. And I'm sure that they're very good in some ways at what they do, but they concentrate on the bigger contracts across Australia. But what I'm really excited about now is we're gradually getting in a position where we'll be able to start taking some of those contracts.
Yeah.
Very close, I believe. In the next few months, we'll probably get a couple.
Yeah.
And that's really exciting because we've come from a company when myself and Andy bought in back in 2007, I think it was. Back in 2007, maybe at the end of 2006, there was a small company there that technologically was still reliant on one IT guy. We had systems that were, they'd come from the 1980s and things. Although there'd been tries to move forward, it was tough because there was a lot of competition back then.
Yeah.
And through our service to the handover industry, through the business brokers, we always were fed a lot of work because we paid attention to make sure that we got the result back that the vendors and the purchasers would agree on and move forward with, which can be really tough sometimes.
Yeah, of course.
Because some of these people, especially people who are new to business, can get really upset about things.
Yeah.
I do remember standing in front of two Chinese ladies who literally wanted to attack each other over about $30 worth of out of code condiments in a deli. Like I've literally had to put my hand on one of them and put my hand on the other and say, right, you stand there and you stand there. This is what's going to happen.
Yeah.
So this is some crazy experiences. But where was I going with that story? So where we were back then, it's been there's been a lot of vision as to where can we go to.
Yes.
And looking around at what, spending money on some interesting things. And Andy Goldthorpe came up with the absolute cracker, because when we bought into the business, the business had an office. Right. And he was very keen to sell it.
Yeah.
And thank God we did, because we probably wouldn't be here without that decision, because we've managed to sell the office and invest in IT and bring new systems to the company just before the crash in 2008.
Yeah. And I think you've highlighted something else really important there, is that you constantly have to be flexible in business, and constantly, you don't have to have the office space. And sometimes, if you do, you might need to let it go, because you go in and grow in as well, making those decisions so you don't drown and not exist anymore. There was something else I want to just ask you before we move on. You mentioned that you don't have a vision board or anything like that, but everything you've kind of visualized has come to fruition. Do you feel like you're on sort of like a high frequency that kind of happens? Or is there anything for our listeners you could share that's helped you manifest those things in life? Because it sounds like you've got quite a strong, I don't know, you put it out there and it tends to happen. So maybe give us some advice on how to make it happen for us.
Well, I believe in karma. And I think the first and most important thing is to go about your business in a way where you try to positively impact those around you.
Yeah.
I think that's very important. But at the same time, do not be a doormat.
No.
The Uber driver was getting tooted on, and there's me shouting at the guy out the window again, just on the way here. a little bit of road rage. I'm like, anyway.
Fair enough.
Because this guy's just, but you got to stand up for yourself, but do it, be ethical and have a real true connection to what you want. I mean, we're sold so much bullshit and dreams. Buy this, you'll be happy. Buy this. Anything that says you're going to be happy by buying it is a one-way ticket to misery. Yeah. And that's all a lot of the self-help gurus. Oh, we'll show you how to be happy. No. That's not how it works. Yeah. People who try to sell happiness are selling misery. I think that's one thing you've got to recognize. So when you need to be really, really true to you, who you are and what you want, and dig deep, so that you're not dealing in a surface, ephemeral, meaningless way. I want to get a, Porsche Boxster S. I'm not saying that that's not important. or it can't work for some people. But for me, funnily enough, I wanted an SRT and I got one, which is bizarre. But anyway, but now I'm driving a Kia Carnival. But what's actually important is this, it's a really meaningful thing. So for me, I always wanted to have children.
Yes.
And I believe that that's the most human thing on the planet. And I've just got another one.
Yes, congratulations.
Went to the shop and got another wee baby. So I've got an 8-year-old, a 9-year-old, and now a 0-year-old.
Yeah.
But what I wanted that family. And then when I was 40, I didn't think I was going to have one. And funnily enough, I saw a medium and he said, by the time you're 42, you'll have 2 children, Stephen.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah, and I did.
Yeah.
But there's energy out there. And I think when you really identify what's really important to you, that has a frequency about it or an energy about it. And you don't get what you deserve in life or what you work for. You attract who you are. So based on who you are, that's how you attract things into your life.
Yeah.
And you've got to be prepared to take risks and try and see through things to the real connections, the real deep connections. So one of the questions that you had in your thing was, what's the craziest thing you've done? Well,
yes, share with us.
I went over to Thailand.
Yeah.
And met an absolutely crazy little lady and brought her back here. And then a couple of weeks after she was here, we found out she was pregnant.
Oh my goodness.
And I went, well, let's get to the doctor and sort that out.
Yeah.
And she was like, oh. And then I was being very careful. And because there's a lot of people there's a lot of traps out there.
Yes.
So recognizing when someone's true or when they're using you is essential to moving forward in your life. Because if you get pulled into the bullshit of someone else who pretends that they're something that they're not, you can try and build stuff, but it's built on sand.
Yeah.
And it's going to fall apart. And I just feel that I really met someone who probably needed me in their life, but also I needed that someone in my life. Because I don't know about you, but when you don't serve a higher purpose than just yourself, and you don't feel of value to those around you, it's very easy to just spiral downwards.
Yeah, of course.
So loneliness, we're not meant to be lonely. That's what I found when I came to Perth. I grew up with a bunch of friends, and when I was young, I wasn't necessarily very popular. I was picked on a lot. I had bad skin and stuff. But what I got really good at was overcoming that. Yeah. Was making friends and valuing them. So if someone's my friend, they know I'm there for them. Yeah,
of course.
And I think that's all part of the genuine energy. Be who you are. Really, really be that person. And don't apologize for it.
Yeah.
But you've got to sort of just be that core of you and then identify the things that are most meaningful to you and get moving forward towards them. And I don't think there's much more to it than that.
Yeah.
I think a lot of the books and the tapes, and I've read a lot of them. Okay. Actually, Michael Lozier's book, The Law of Attraction, is probably the key one. And in there, it sort of talks about the mechanics of how the kind of universe works. I believe that we live in a benevolent universe. Yeah. I believe that there's an intelligence behind it. And it responds to genuineness. It responds to effort. And it responds to desires. And our minds tune us into this mechanic that works.
Yeah.
Whether you believe it's divine or whether you believe it's the universe, whatever. I don't think. The funny thing is, I've never clarified in my mind what my beliefs are.
You haven't?
So I try to keep it really basic. I believe that there is a benevolent force, universe, energy, God. I don't try and label it because labels are irrelevant.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't care what we call it.
Yeah.
It doesn't care what labels we use it just is. And our language, we try to describe things and to put them in boxes. But language is limited.
Yeah.
So if you have an absolute feeling of trust in this process and you push forward, I believe that there are incredible paths that everyone can open up. And there's multiple ones, but pick one and do it. Don't just sit there and go, I never knew what I wanted to do. Did I want to be a stock taker? Well, life was the Monty Python guys, the lowest of the low. I successfully went to Australia and now I own a company that is the lowest of the low, stock takers. They're worse than cleaning toilets, which I've done before as well. But look, it's a journey. And I think that if people try to get rid of the distractions, which is very hard.
Yeah.
Try and understand themselves. I mean, the answers are all within. Most people who are out there shouting about things are trying to say, oh, we need to fix that, we need to fix that. You know what? Most of them need to actually turn that finger and fix themselves.
Yeah, yeah.
Because we tend to put energy in to hiding from ourselves. What was it? Nelson Mandela said, it's not our inadequacies that we're afraid of. It's our wondrous awesomeness. I can't remember the exact words.
I remember which one he's speaking of.
It's amazing. That's what we're afraid of. Because we are not the physical consumer that society wishes, because all the predators, all the parasites, that's what they want to convince us that we are. But in actual fact, they're the ones that are meaningless. They're the ones who are having ephemeral surface lives because they have no love.
Yeah. And
I feel really sorry for the elites of this world because they have no love. I've met someone who I believe was, he grew up in an intelligence community. So his father was high up in the CIA, in the military, and I don't believe he had a soul. I don't believe he had that. He had this incredible computational, he slept half an hour a night to an hour.
Oh, wow.
He drove everybody in business that he was with so hard, and he's an absolute genius. But does he have compassion? Does he have love? And I think that there's a lot of very damaged sociopathic, psychopathic people running around who have an ability to affect us in many, many ways through media, through the way the systems work. But if we allow them to control us, we are lost. So we must stand up and we must be who we are. And the key thing is hold on to your critical faculties, for crying out loud. And I know that you said something about trust, and trust is a really interesting one. Because I think the first thing that people need to learn is be skeptical about everything. Be skeptical, investigate, learn about shit before you start trusting.
Yes.
Because if you do it the other way around,
that's a good point.
If you do it the other way around, you could end up in all sorts of trouble.
Yes.
But once you've got a really good handle on what's going on, how it affects you, the good influences, the bad influences, then when you find people that you can believe, and it's people, it's individual human beings, when you find those individual trust in them, because that's the only place that you can put trust. You can't put trust in systems. You can't put trust in governments. You can't put trust in any of that stuff.
Yeah.
That's how I feel. And again, I don't go to any religious services regularly or anything anymore. I see that a lot of structures in this world have been created for the purposes of control. And maybe I've gone too far, but I see it. I see it everywhere. I see it everywhere. But there's an awful lot of good in a lot of these organizations, an awful lot of good. And I have no issues with people having beliefs, so long as those beliefs are helping them in their lives for themselves.
Yeah.
So that they're compassionate, they're taking care of people. So in Christianity, in Orthodox and Catholic and all the different types that there are in Hindu religions and in Buddhism, Muslims, every single one of them has an amazing amount of really, really good things.
Yeah.
But when you start to dig really, really deep, there's some dark aspects to almost all of them.
Yeah.
And you just look at all the religious wars and the persecutions and the destruction of information that's been done in the name of religion. I can understand why people could become atheistic. But at the same time, when they become atheistic, they can lose their humanity because it's one step from atheism to nihilism.
Yeah.
And that's where they want us. That's where they want us. They want us completely devoid of spirituality. They want us completely devoid of our ability to manifest. They just want little drones running around that they can parasite off.
When you say that, do you mean like people who are high up in power as such?
I believe that there are nefarious influences in the world that are not in the interests of the individual humans having wonderful lives.
Yeah.
I think this is something that people should really look into, because who was it, Adam Smith, who talked about when businesses get together, no businesses get together without there being some sort of price fixing or they create some sort of conspiracy, right?
Yeah.
In business, it happens. It happens in every aspect of human life. When people get together, they form, there might be a group of people come together who are in cryptocurrency.
Yeah.
And they might create something and they'll keep little secrets to themselves and try and that's just part of human nature. But I think that globally, when you start researching things, so I'm an ancient medieval historian.
Yeah.
I did a history degree and a classics degree.
Oh, interesting.
So I even did Latin and stuff like that. The only exam I've ever failed in my life.
Oh.
Can you believe it? I've gone into the exam, and yet I wasn't the most studious of people at university. I was really good at certain things. If I liked it, I just needed to listen and I'd remember things, recall. And I had a real talent for being able to piece information together and argue with guys who'd been studying it for 30 years to a standstill. I was really good at that.
Yeah.
Arguing's my thing. And I was with a girl for 17 years. And one of my friends, I said, I feel really sorry for Nicola. I'm like, what are you talking about? It's like, she never won one bloody argument with you. I'm like, well, I'm thinking, well, of course, And he's like, it's not because you were right,
Yeah.
It's just because you argue better than any other bugger I've ever met in my life.
So I won't get into argument with you, Anya.
And I actually said, God, you know what? I thought it was always because I was right. But you know what? There may be some truth to what you said. But anyway, so at these educating yourself on how the world works, what's happening is really quite important. That's how I feel. But it's not important for everyone.
Yeah.
But I found that as part of my journey, that it's pushed me to be more respectful to our history and our culture than I feel that we are being trained now, because we are being retrained at the moment to divorce ourselves from hundreds of thousands of years of human development and to throw that in the bin and to say that almost the reverse is true. So this is where we have whole populations being trained to be guilty about what their ancestors did.
Yeah.
This, to me, is disgusting. And you're also training people who, so the critical race theory, for example, this is an inversion of truth. And the minorities that they're trying to say, well, you are persecuted, they're creating guilt in one part of the population, and they're creating a sense of victimhood in the other.
Yeah.
Which one of those is positive? So there's a massive move in the Western world to disempower the population and make them into sick, narcissistic, drug dependent,
and alcohol dependent,
dysfunctional human beings who couldn't stand up if their life depended on it.
Yeah.
Because, and we saw that all through the COVID thing as well, how there's serious machinations going on and there's agendas. Look, if you want to look into this, there's a gentleman called Dr. David Martin. And Dr. David Martin, I've actually had the pleasure of speaking to. I don't know how I managed it, but I managed it. I just
amazing.
kept reaching out to him.
Yeah.
And we had an amazing conversation. But there was no novel coronavirus. There's patents that go back decades that started off in the 1960s. Wow. And when he goes into the written record, and when he goes into what was presented publicly at various functions and industry talks, he's going through facts. Learn some facts, because you need to have a grounding in facts so you can sense when they're telling you lies.
Yeah.
And the sad thing is that we're surrounded by lies. And standing when telling the truth becomes a crime, we have some serious issues.
Yeah. It's a good point.
Yeah, that was a little bit of a diversion there.
No, that's great. I love it. It's great,
if I can talk about that sort of stuff.
Yes, I mean, of course. You can speak about whatever your heart desires.
What the hell is going on in this country with our politics? Well, let me tell you.
Yeah.
We have a political class that has sold out Australia as a country and has sold out the people of Australia in numerous international agreements which have been used to bypass checks and balances to erode our economic ability. So you look back 30, 40 years, there's manufacturing.
Right.
This was all sold off in international agreements. And is it any real surprise that we are in the state that we're in? It's not a surprise, because it was all part of the plan.
Yeah, for years.
And it's all hidden from the public. And it's been the Labour Party and the Liberal Party, because ultimately neither are representing the people of Australia in any true way. I don't think we're going to see a Prime Minister, and people might laugh, but I liked your budgie smuggling Prime Minister. I actually liked him.
I'm sorry, I misheard my water, yeah.
God, his name's just gone out of my head.
Oh, who was it? When was he in?
About 15 years ago, but pre-Kevin Rudd.
I immigrated in 2011. Anyway. You can have a quick Google.
Yeah, I'm going to Google him. President of Australia, Prime Minister, PM.
The budgie smuggler.
Budgie smuggling Prime Minister of Australia. Tony Abbott.
Oh, yeah.
Right? I don't think we're going to get someone like him ever again, because he actually was a real human being who had genuine beliefs, and he wanted things to happen. And I having listened to him and met him and listened to him speak, there were elements within his own cabinet that hamstrung what he wanted to do, because this is how the elements of control work. They don't control everything. They control key people in organizations. And if they can't control you, they'll control those around you to make sure that you're impotent.
They've got no choice.
Because they've got no choice. But look at who we've got as a Prime Minister. And we had Kevin Rudd, who I just can't believe that Australian men would vote for a guy who wore that much lipstick. Right?
Yeah.
Did it make any sense to you?
No. I follow it.
They disgusted me. But
these
politicians have they are not there to represent us. They're not.
No, and I mean, you kind of like us in Aluka, and you can't get eggs at the moment. And I'm like, how many farms in Australia, like, are they shipping them out?
No, they've killed 10% of the hens, 2.1 million hens.
Did they?
Yeah, funnily enough.
Damn, I need my
It's
protein.
Funny. I went to the shop yesterday and there was no eggs in it.
Yeah,
and I'm like, and I knew that they'd been killing them because, of course, it's bird flu. Bird flu.
Oh.
Bird flu. You've got to be scared. Be very afraid.
Okay.
Be very afraid, because they're probably going to... The documentation's there. They've already got the next thing. The next COVID is all in plan. It's all there. They're going to try it again. They're going to do it again. And all I can say is, look into things. Look behind the headlines because you're being fed bullshit.
Yeah. I think you've highlighted something really important. I think even when you meet someone, now I have obviously, as I've gotten older, I think when I was younger, I would just trust someone firsthand. You know, if they say they've done something or they've, you know, X, Y, Z, I would just believe them. But I think my mentor was also, he says the same as you. Like, you have to be skeptical or cynical of everyone. And a lot of what you're saying, you're echoing a lot of what he's shared. Like, you have to actually question someone. Well, you know,
I got so screwed over because the thing is, Tracy, you're a good person. I was a good person too.
Yeah.
I still like to think I am.
I like to think I am, yeah.
But when you're going out into the world, you think everybody's the same as you.
100%. Operate from the same morals.
Exactly. But they don't. And this is where it gets painful. This is where growth becomes painful because you meet people, you buy into things. There's people who end up in relationships. There's people who end up in marriages. There's people who end up with families, and they're not based on truth and integrity.
Yeah.
Having that gut feel and the women's intuition, you know, maybe I think men have got intuition too. You know?
I think so.
And you know what I'm sick? I'll tell you what I'm sick of.
Yeah.
Women jumping up and down saying, this is a women issue, and men jumping up and down going, this is a men issue. No, actually, guess what? We're part of the same human race. 100%. Without each other, we are nothing.
Yes.
So this is a humanity problem. Let's look at it from that perspective. Stop playing victim cards, getting on our high horse and pointing at the other person.
Yeah.
Let's start looking at it holistically as the human race.
Yeah. And again, another great point that you've mentioned. But also just to backtrack, like you mentioned, you know, a lot of some relationships, marriages aren't built on trust and integrity. I guess, you know, there's that human element where you do want to be with someone. You don't want to be lonely. As you said before, you know, you don't want to be lonely. So, of course, you've got your rose-tinted glasses on. What are some key things you can maybe give our listeners to kind of look out for? Because, I mean, I've been one of those. I've been burnt as well. You know, you meet this person or even in a business partnership, you think, oh, my gosh, you know, love hearts, whatever the case may be. But then as you get to know them, the cracks start to show, and it can be, you know, really detrimental to everything, like your well-being, the way you see the world, you question everything. Have you got a couple of tips that you can maybe share with us? Like Google stalk them or?
Well, my mum would like everybody in my life to be bloody awesome for me and do the right thing all the time. Okay? That's never going to happen.
No.
So the first thing that we've got to do is we've got to get that fantasy out our head. Because if we live with the ideals that are fantastical and not going to be realistic, we're setting ourselves up for massive disappointment and hurt and pain, and we're creating it all ourselves.
Yeah, true.
Because right, I have this picture of you, I want you to be my wife, blah, 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 and I build you up into this, but that's not really who you are. So I am creating the failure that relationship is going to be right from the off.
Makes sense, yeah.
So you got to try and just appreciate what's really in front of you for who they are. Appreciate your friends for who they are. Do you know what? They might have made mistakes. Guess what? I've made mistakes too.
Yeah.
I've made shitloads of mistakes.
Yeah.
And some people will have forgiven me them and some people might not have.
Yeah.
But ultimately, once you become more aware, appreciate the people for who they are. Don't compare them to some ideal.
Yeah.
If you're comparing people to an ideal, you're always going to be disappointed, and you're going to have this horrible attitude that everybody's out there and they're all this and they're all that. That's not the case.
Yeah.
They're just human beings who are going through their own journey. And when we meet on our journeys, if we can say, I've got lots of stories, but it's really hard to I can't quite share some of them.
Sure.
All right, okay. Let's say
whatever you're comfortable with.
Let's say that you run a bar, and you've got a great manager, but you know he's stealing a bit, and he'll smile at you and this and that and the other. You don't know everything that's going on in that guy's life.
Yeah.
Now, me, I know that there's people that go, oh, he's stealing, bang, boom, take him away, lock him up, blah, blah. Right, but you know what? If it's a bottle of spirit a week, but he's running a great business and he's doing this and he's doing that, and maybe he's just got a weakness for that alcohol. Maybe we just need to be a little bit bloody compassionate that maybe he's struggling. Maybe he's up to here in financial debt, which, there's all sorts of reasons that people do things. I do believe that there are things that are maybe unforgivable.
Yes, I agree.
But they've been pretty extreme. I've forgiven lots. And this is the key, forgiveness.
Yeah.
Because being angry with someone is just you hurting yourself, hoping that something happens to them bad.
Very true.
Right?
I haven't wished that at all.
So if you can forgive, accept people for who they are, you can build truly meaningful relationships that last forever. Because if someone's, doesn't do the ideal thing, well, it's like, no worries.
Yeah.
It happens.
Yeah, I think there's also a time where you have to gauge and say, well, look, this is what I'm willing to, like if the guy's, the bar example, if he's stealing spirits, fine, but there comes a tipping point, I think, where you really have to assess, is this still okay? Or is it kind of now I'm kind of going against my values and morals to compensate for someone who hasn't dealt with their issues that they have.
It's funny that we brought up this liquor thing. I had a gentleman.
I had a gentleman for like 3.5 years.
But it's also interesting because it comes back to stock taking, because liquor is the most stolen of all stock.
Oh, really?
Yes.
It makes sense.
And I think the figures are, there's a consumer report, whatever, says roughly 80% of stock theft called shrinkage.
Yes.
Because it shrunk. The stock shrunk.
Yeah, we used to have it on the airline, actually. Yeah, the shrinkage.
The shrinkage, yeah. Well, that's stock that's gone missing with no apparent explanation.
Vanished.
Well, it's 80% of its staff. I think that I read about that when I was doing my marketing. I went and researched it.
Yeah.
But alcohol, people have problems with alcohol, and you really have to run a tight ship. So if you have an alcohol business, you got to watch everyone in it and just be businesslike and understand that we don't live in a world where we can just go, oh, he's my mate, he's wonderful, he's this, or he's the best man, blah, blah, blah. Because if you don't check, things can go really, really badly wrong. I mean, I've got customers who've lost hundreds of thousands of dollars to managers who've ripped them off. Hundreds of thousands. And I find that really, really sad. That'd be a very hard thing to forgive.
Yes.
But at the same time, I have been in business and I have put money into things, and I have discovered that I have been being ripped off by a friend. But I forgave that, because ultimately, who is responsible for that happening?
Yeah, it's a good point.
It was me. I allowed it to happen. I enabled it to happen.
Yeah.
And I think if we try and look into ourselves to see whatever goes on in your life, just look in the mirror, because that's the person who's responsible.
And have we enabled that behavior in some way?
Exactly. Oh, that person did this. All right. I was a bit unhappy with my missus this morning because I was getting an Uber, and I shouted at her, and I'll apologise when I go home. All right. Because
confessions on the podcast.
Yeah, I know. It's funny how it works, but you know what? My mouth just goes and stuff comes out, Tracy. I'm sorry, it's just the way it works. And I'm feeling a bit bad because she thought everything was fine. The Uber driver comes up.
Yeah.
I went back inside to kiss my kids goodbye. I said, keep the Uber driver there, make sure he doesn't drive off.
Yeah.
She said to him, it'll be 1 minute. She's turned around. He's driven off.
Oh, dear.
I said, what? You just had to stop. So.
You were still on time, though.
Just.
No, you were fine.
By 5 minutes. It's like, get here in plenty of time so you can relax and prepare yourself for the interview. And I'm stressed to all crap trying to book another bloody Uber to get here. Anyway, so ultimately, she did what she thought, and she thought she'd said to him, he'll be 1 minute, but she probably just hasn't understood or whatever, and he's driven off, and I wanted to punch him in the face. I was really annoyed.
Yeah.
Right? So I'll go back and I'll make it up to her, because she's a wonderful little woman.
Yeah. At least you can acknowledge where you kind of went wrong, shall we say, because I find not many people can do that, or they kind of will shift blame or kind of push it under the carpet, and then it's, you've done this to me, as opposed to, like you said, trying to look at it from the angle of what have I done in this situation. I think you also mentioned something really important as to how have I allowed a behavior or allowed myself to be treated? And it just, I think, goes to that
100%.
boundary setting, right? Or if you're no longer willing to tolerate certain things, to step away completely from it, no matter how hard it can be.
And it happens in all aspects of life. So you go into a football team, like my little son, he's going through all the things of trying to get in the football team. He's felt, I don't want to play in this team anymore.
Yeah.
And I'm like, Stevie, every team that you go to, you're going to have to break into the team. There's always cliques. There's always some are more welcoming than others.
Yeah.
And I had a fairly hard team in Bassendean, Caledonian to break into, and I eventually broke into it. But if you go on the pitch, and when I was growing up in Scotland, I wasn't skillful. I had asthma and eczema. I didn't train, but I did play every day at school. And then when I eventually did go into the sport, I was way behind the development of a lot of the players. So I'd sometimes go to training and players would laugh at me. And anybody who laughed at me, I'd make sure if we were playing in the game, they would stop laughing at me, because if there was one thing I was really good at is taking the ball off good players. I was brilliant at taking the ball off good players. Just give me the ball and I'm rubbish with it, but I can stop you playing, pal.
Yeah.
And I used to play for pubs and all sorts of things, but it's the psychology. But if you accept people putting you down and having a go at you and you're going along with that dynamic.
Yeah.
And at some point, you've got to stand up and you've got to say, this is my boundary.
Definitely.
Like, there's various times when I've put up with shit, and then you just go, mate, if you don't shut up, let's go to the car park right now.
Yeah, it becomes like that hard deadline's been reached.
I've put up with so much, but do you know what? That's not a bad thing. See, this violence is a bad thing. Bullshit. Violence is a normal part of human interaction. Now, I'm not saying that it's always positive,
of course,
but sometimes it's required, because people will push and push and push and push and push and push and push. Are you just going to suck it up and take it? Are you just going to be that victim? Because there's a lot of victims running around on antidepressants who are victims.
So many.
And they need to empower themselves, not hide in medication. Because toxic masculinity, hiding from our own true natures is not, and labeling it and saying it's this is no, there's an awful lot of positives that can happen. We have to embrace Dr. DeMartini. He is to me, he's like a prophet walking amongst men.
Yeah.
I've met him on a few occasions. I've been to a few of his talks. Cool. I spent money on his breakthrough experience.
That would have been cool.
It was incredible when I really felt that I was being screwed over massively. And I wanted to take one of my friend's heads and bash it with a baseball bat till he didn't move anymore.
Wow.
That was the level of anger I was containing, but nobody would know because I kept it to myself. But I went to DeMartini and I learned about me. And I learned to accept everything was my responsibility, and that we all had, he says there's 30,000 human behaviors and we're all capable of every single one, all of us.
Jeez.
So you can't look at someone else and go, oh, look at what they've done, because you're capable of doing the exact same thing. And when you start to understand that, then you recognize that, in these behaviors, there might be circumstances where that behavior is the appropriate behavior.
Yeah.
So people say, oh, violence has never solved anything. When I was getting bullied as a kid because I had bad skin and scabs on my face, and the entire class is chanting scab, scab, scab until I cried.
Yeah.
All right. 30 out of 34 would be chanting it. There was a few instigators. And one day, this instigator started it, and I just walked up and I punched him in the side of the head as hard as I could.
Yeah.
Guess what? My life got better.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying we should all run around and smack people in the face, but at the same time, if that's what the situation calls for, sometimes it has to be done.
It does. I was bullied at school as well, so I had a massive overbite. I had braces, thank goodness. But I was part of drum majorettes. You swing
part of what?
Drum majorettes, where you swing a batting around in a flag. Oh my word, what was I thinking? Anyway, seemed like a great idea.
Why would you train to be a cheater? I don't get this.
Like
why would you train to do?
It was actually worse. You
was
wore
it worse
like
than
a
that?
Busby thing, and you had like
I remember. Hey, do you know what? The uniforms were quite sexy though.
They were, but oh my word, like it's a whole bunch of girls, and they just got bitchy, and I was bullied as well. And eventually, just one day, I was like, no freaking more. So we didn't get like physical or anything, but stood up to them, and like you say, life just completely changed, and that was the final day of it, and. Yeah, and then she tried to add me on Facebook a few years ago, and I was like, hell no.
Do you know what's funny? Like, people that used to bully me at school, like, they meet you and they go, oh, Stevie, how you doing? Blah, blah, blah. Do you know what? Quite often, a lot of the people who are exceptionally popular at school or who have the ability to run around and bully other people, they've had their best days at school.
So true.
And I'm really happy I got bullied. And I'm really happy bullying exists because it toughens us up and teaches us lessons.
It does.
And all this wrapping up, you can't forge steel and cotton wool. That's one of I made that one up.
Yeah.
Right? You can't forge steel and cotton wool. So I've been really pretty hard on my son when it comes to his football, and I don't accept him whinging, whining, or any of that stuff. You know, man up, sort it out, deal with it. Okay? Because that's what my grandfathers did with me.
Yeah.
My mum wanted to wrap me up in cotton wool, and my grandfathers wanted me to just, if you're getting bullied, pick the biggest one, smack him in the face as hard as you can, Steve.
Sorted.
And I never did it. For years, I let it happen. For years and years and years, the mental, psychological torture was horrible.
Yeah.
So my son is very sensitive. I was very, very sensitive, very empathic. And it's a very powerful trait, but it can be totally abused by people around you.
Yeah, my brother's like that.
I have to be very, very careful because I'm very hard on him, but at the same time, I'm building resilience in him. And he's getting stronger. And sometimes, you know, parents, I had a parent stand up and say, you can't be like that with your son, right? And I'm like, 2 years later, my son is excelling and doing really well, and he's really happy. And now I talk to that woman, but she comes from a wrapping cotton wool thing. I come from a chuck him in at the deep end and push. But you've got to be careful because you can't break someone. Yeah, sure. Because people can break. Yeah, that's true. But my little girl, for example, not so sensitive. So I coach a girls' football team. Oh, cool. An underage girls' football team. I was asked to by Dianella White Eagles. Yeah. And I said, well, if I'm going to do this, I do it traditionally, my way, the way that football coaching. I'm not wrapping anyone up. Stevie, you just do your thing. Like, great. And there was a girl who, I believe in energetic entities. Yeah, same. Okay. And I believe that they can get a hold of you sometimes. And I've watched people go through hell psychologically and emotionally from things that have happened when they've been very young. Yeah. Really, really, really dark stuff. And I was very, very close to that for many, many, many years. Sure. That teaches you things and it shows you things. And you see, I've watched energy go from one person and poison another. Oh, wow. It's very, very strange. Intense, yeah. But anyway, one of the girls came and she's very physical, the most competitive, a wonderful girl. But there was a few sessions where this real dark energy was there and she was bullying all the other girls. Yeah. And this will give you a little idea of how resilient my little girl is. So my girl is the youngest there, one of the smallest, incredibly talented. But in the context of this, I didn't realize that this girl had made her cry. And she'd said, oh, last week, she made me cry as well. All right. Oh, Chris, I didn't know that. And she, we went to the training the next time. And with girls, you have to put a lot of energy into them to help them get competitive. Boys just look at each other and go, I'm going to beat you. Yeah. Girls don't do that. They're wired differently. Right? They'll play with their hair and blah, blah, blah. So when I set my team up, I do certain sorts of drills and then I get them competing for a ball in a little square. They've all got a ball and they've got to kick everybody else with the ball away and there's one winner, right? Turns out Man City do the same drill. It's quite cool. Right. Cool. Anyway, I do it every single time because I'm building competitiveness into my girls. So when we walk onto the pitch, we're ready to play football. So we had an unbeaten first season. And half the girls had never played football, never even kicked the ball before. Gee, so it was incredible. Yeah. So anyway, my girls go into this training session. We do the little skills thing, and then we're doing the competitive thing. And I want to see physicality. I want to see you putting your hips and shoulders in. I want to see you holding people off with your arms. I want to see all that. And the next minute, all I hear is crack. Oh. My little girl has gone through the girl who's been bullying the entire team the smallest girl there, she's gone crack right through her ankle, and there's the bully lying crying.
Oh.
But you know what? She's not really a bully. It was just this energy was in her
Yeah.
for a couple of weeks, maybe 3-4 weeks. And that to me is like, I put up with bullying for bloody years before I smacked that guy in the head. My little girl has put up with it for one session, and the next session, bang! I'm like,
it'll stop now.
this is great. And it did. Stop instantly.
Yeah. Definitely.
So I'm a big believer in trying to empower. And people might watch my methods and go, Stephen, that's not empowering. But you know what? I see things from a very traditional standpoint. I'm not into the sort of airy-fairy nonsense that I see going on at the moment.
So much of it, a lot of fluff.
It's a lot of fluff because it's about making everyone average.
So true. Yeah.
And just, you know, to excel, you need to push. You need to have standards. You need to, you know, you can't just have everyone a winner just because they show up.
No.
There's winners and losers in life, and that's what they're trying to take away.
That is.
Guess why? Because they don't want us fighting to achieve things. They don't want that. They want a corporatocracy where there's big companies that have the means of production, have everything, and they have the rest of us as a kind of underclass. Yeah. Remember Buck Rogers?
Yes.
They had the scabs and they had the people who live in it.
Yeah.
That's what these people fantasize about. This Davos crew and Bilderberg Group and all these super wealthy people who control the monetary system. Yeah. Don't be fooled. Don't think the people who control the money system are in control. Yeah. They're just the accountants for the people who are really in control.
Actually in control, yeah.
But that makes me sound like a bloody crazy
No, I think
person.
there's a lot of truth that you've spoken. And I think, again, it's a minority that would feel that way. But I think there is a lot to it, right? So,
well, the funny thing is, I spent years learning history at school.
So interesting.
Second World War. Almost most of the things that I've learned are not really true. Not really true.
Yeah, really?
Yep. And that staggered me. But if you stop learning after school, you know nothing. Oh, because they're not teaching you at school. They're not, true. You know? So I think keep educating yourself. Keep sort of read some books.
Yes.
Get around people who are centered in themselves, that are solid. And you might be in a place in life, and I've been in places in life where I've not seen anybody around me. I've been feeling like I'm drowning. But I've always tried to be that person myself. Yeah. And in time, with patience, you'll make these connections with others. People without hope will perish. I think Moses says that in the Bible.
Yeah, in the Bible, yeah.
Hope is essential because if you have no hope, you have no ability to manifest anything.
So true.
So you have hope. Have hope that you can get somewhere. That's the first thing. If you don't have hope, you've got nothing. And then try and be a good, solid person that other people can depend on, even if they're taking the mickey out of you. Yeah. Even if they're using you up and chewing you up. Be the person who stands up and goes, boom, well, I said I would do that and I'm going to do it.
Yeah, and honour your word.
And honour your word, because that's all the power that we have. Your word is your power. George Zalaki.
Many people do, hey, honestly. They just,
And sometimes it's pretty painful to follow through on those things.
Yeah.
But it makes you someone, it builds you into a person who will attract others who do the same thing.
Yeah, very true.
And that's the key to energy, is you attract like. So if you're really dark, manipulative, horrible, guess what you surround yourself with? Yeah.
I've experienced that in my own life.
And you can even see it in groups of friends. You can see really positive groups of friends, and you can see groups of friends that are just like bitching clubs. Oh yeah. And it's like
gossip club, yeah.
Choose wisely your friends who you let into your life. Yeah. And the other thing is, be very, very discerning in the relationships that you go headlong into, because people mistake lust for love all the time. Yeah. Oh, was I really in love with her? That lasted 3 months, 4 months, 5 months? Oh, yeah, that wasn't love, mate.
Yep, there's a big difference.
And that's not to say that lust isn't a great thing. Lust is a great thing, but understand what it is.
Yes, and know the difference, and make sure that person's values align with you. And also I think also what you highlighted about, you have this view of someone, and if they're not meeting it and it's not aligned, like step away, you know?
Well, one step away and evaluate. Is your picture of them fair?
Yeah, is it realistic? Yeah, of course.
And every single one of my friends has got flaws. I've got flaws.
Yeah, me too.
I accept my friends for who they are, and I love them being part of my life. And people might say, oh, well, you know, some of them might not appear positive to other people, but we get different things out of relationships. And I'll be perfectly honest. If I'm not helping people, there's something about me that feels unworthy. And there's the rescuer personality.
Yes.
Is it right? I don't know if we're all like that, but I know that I'm like that.
I think I'm like that, yeah.
I think that, to be honest, I think we all are like that.
Yeah.
But then I think everybody's like me, maybe. But as we get older, you find that old people, all they want to be is of service and of use to help the people around them.
True.
And what do we do in our civilization? Our wonderful, what we do, we kick them off to our home.
Yeah.
I'll give you a little story.
Them away.
My mum spent decades looking after first my dad's mum and dad as they got older and died, and then her mum and dad as they got older and died.
Yeah.
And looked after them at home for as long as she could. And So I said, Mum, Mum, I can't, you know, what you've done. I mean, you've dedicated your life to looking after family. I said, as soon as you start to go, you're off to a home.
Oh dear.
But you know, you judge a society on how they treat their children and how they treat their old people and how they treat their animals.
So true.
And I like my wife being Thai. That there's a village society which has so many positives. It has negatives as well. Everything has. But the old people are surrounded by kids.
Yeah.
And the kids are surrounded by old people. And it's not an accident that we want to get rid of our old people because our old people have knowledge that they don't want us to have.
Yeah.
Because our traditions and our histories are something that we should be proud of.
Yeah.
Because it's the product of thousands and thousands of years of development. I don't know if I can say this.
That's okay.
But I watched a purple-haired lesbian on the telly. Now, I don't have anything against purple-haired lesbians, but I don't like this one because she was saying that a man should have to ask their infant their permission to change their nappy.
I think, was this from that documentary?
I actually saw it in a clip many years ago.
Yeah,
and I think the documentary's been...
Well. Yes.
Yeah, but this is what we have. We have an agenda. And it's not grassroots agenda, okay? People haven't been screaming out to change their pronouns all across the world en masse. It is an elite top-down agenda to disempower and to confuse. And it's
creating confusion.
It's creating confusion because what do they have when people are confused? They do nothing.
Yeah, I entered it was a obstacle course, and actually the person who won the obstacle, the women's league, was a guy called Emily. And I was like, it's just not right. I mean, again, people might differ with my view, but I just feel create another two categories for people who were vice versa, and they've now decided they're Emily when they were Adam. And then it's fair game because to the woman who actually came first, second and third, or second, third and fourth thereafter, that was just,
I've been saying this,
disrespectful. So.
It's beyond disrespectful. I've said this a long time. I'd love to just, like that Leah Thomas who's doing the things. Christ, I'd have walked up and slapped him in the face and said, leave the girls alone, you big bully.
Yeah.
Because that's what you're doing.
Yeah.
These women have spent their lives to try and achieve things.
Completely.
And I'm completely over it. And I have no problem. People can be who they want to be. They've always been able to be that. It's not been easy. Yes, we have a bit of there's a culture and there's a straitjacket and there's expectations and all that. Sure, that's how our humanity has evolved.
Yes.
But that doesn't mean that there wasn't transvestites.
No.
You go down to King's Cross, you see them running, well, you used to see them, you don't now, but you used to see them run about. Did I have a problem with them? No. No problem whatsoever. I'd have a laugh with them. I actually had transvestite friends here in Perth.
They're good fun.
I didn't care.
Great people.
But they don't do transvestite story hour for old people. It's all about confusing the kids, getting their gender identities confused because we're all on a journey to discover ourselves. But to try and make out that these kids are special and lavish attention, what the kids want, they want attention.
Yeah.
So what do? They do what it takes to get attention.
Yeah.
And it's just feeding the disempowerment agenda for humanity. And it's a top-down elite thing. So when people say, oh, but it's all about this. No, it's not.
Yeah.
It's designed to fool you into thinking that by supporting it, you're being conscientious and loving and caring. But that's not what's going on. What's going on is our society is getting ripped apart and the soul of humanity is being stolen to take away our ability to manifest and to be spiritual and to be anything, because we're going to be drugged up, sexually confused, narcissistic.
And average, like you said before.
It's really sad.
Steve, thank you so much for the convo today. I feel like we could chat for another 3 hours.
I can't believe the direction it took. But
thank
hopefully
you. I loved it. It was great. I'll be honest.
Do you know what? It's true. I'm telling you what I feel.
No, it's honestly, like, I really, a lot of respect for being so open and truthful. And I didn't even use my notes, which is great. So,
well, look, and here's the thing. I remember when I was standing up during COVID and I got banned from Facebook and all this sort of stuff. And people were saying, Stevie, because I said some very controversial things. I attacked people and what they were saying. And I'm 100% convinced that I was right. I even dreamed of ripping Bill Gates' throat out with my teeth.
Goodness.
I've never had a violent dream like that before. I did.
Wowza.
He was in Australia doing a talk show and I was in the audience and he starts bouncing his rubbish and I've just ran and gone across everyone. I've jumped on him, I'm going, how am I going to kill him? And I just bit his neck and ripped it out. And then I woke up.
Thank goodness.
But all these people that I believe that I'm on the right side of history, as is said, and their lies and deceptions and manipulations needed to be exposed. But standing up saying it, people were saying to me, Stevie, you're going to attract attention. Now my Facebook posts, if I was in the UK, I could go to jail. Oh, wow. You do realise that?
I think I've heard,
that is what is happening in my country, in Scotland, which has been ripped apart by political leadership and agenda-driven social engineering. They've destroyed the country that I grew up in.
South Africa's the same. It's heartbreaking.
It's heartbreaking. But one of my friends said to me, he said, Stephen, he says, you got to keep your mouth shut. You go, what would she say? I said, because you've got kids. And I'm like, that's how they get us, mate.
Yeah.
That's how they get us, because we've got too much to lose. But you know what? Because I've got kids, I'm going to stand up more and I'm going to make my voice heard. I also do some interviews for Edge Radio as well. So I've got a couple of really interesting guests coming up. One of the chairman, I think, of the Aligned Council of Australia. So there's all these resistance movements to the agenda, which just disgusts me.
Steve, I have to say, I think it's again, utmost respect, and also the way that you're not scared to voice your opinions. I think it takes a lot. I know I'm one to speak my mind often as well, but I think the world needs us to, because again, like you say, everyone who's not so inclined will just believe whatever they hear and buy into the bullshit constantly. So
that's right.
Don't change.
Well, hopefully I won't lose any customers from it.
We'll just.
But look, honestly, that's what I believe. Well,
yeah.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for the time, Tracy. It's been a really interesting conversation, and I really appreciate what you're doing, and I think it's a great thing. So
thank you so much, and congrats on your new baby as well. And thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Tracy.
Cheers.